Where did you get that? She asked, sounding genuinely surprised. I showed you proof of your infidelity, and you're asking me where I got it. Does it matter? Will it change the fact that you cheated on me? I asked my wife of 7 years, it looks bad. I admit we kissed, but it's not a big deal. We were in full view of others. So that's your excuse? No explanation of who he is or why you were kissing, she replied. You think that just because there's no sex in the picture, it's fine. Is that how you think we should keep our vows? Brian, I see you're upset. We were just caught off guard. Making a big deal out of this won't help. Do something foolish like start a fight and he'll punch you. I won't let that happen. Thanks for your honesty. You've made your choice, so I'll make mine. I replied angrily. I turned and ran upstairs to pack. She followed me. What are you doing? She asked, confused. I'm packing a suitcase. I responded curtly, but why? She questioned, sounding desperate. I can't take your lies. And deceit. I need to leave before I do something I regret. I growled, don't be silly, Brian. You wouldn't slap me. She said, trying to reason with me, today I thought you'd never cheat on me. We don't know each other. I shot back, cheating. Who said I cheated? Kissing him wasn't cheating. She argued, there you go lying again. But I've never cheated on you, Brian. I didn't. She shouted, her voice rising, cheat on you with him or anyone else. What do you call this? I held out another picture from that same night, a pretty good picture of you entertaining him. Where does it matter? Does knowing change the fact that you cheated and lied? I demanded she drop the pictures and sobbed, trying to hug me and stay away. I gave you a chance to be honest, but you didn't think I was worth the truth. I could have stayed to discuss this for our son's sake if you were honest, but you demand too much. I'll take my phone only call for emergencies with Bobby, or I'll block you. She nodded and I walked out. You had a chance to be honest, but you didn't think I was worth it. I could have stayed to discuss this for our son's sake if you were honest, but you demanded too much. I'll take my phone and only call for emergencies with Bobby, or I'll block you. She nodded and I walked out, furious and heartbroken. I checked into a motel on Friday night and decided to take the weekend to consider my options. If I divorced her, Bobby would be in a single-parent home and I'd have to pay alimony and child support. She should have explained or apologized. That's why I decided it was better for us to be apart and think about our next move. The absence of my wife and son weighed heavily on me and the loneliness was unbearable. I cried until I passed out by noon the next day. I started getting messages throughout the day. I'd earned an engineering degree and worked at a local chemical lab for 5 years. Then I was offered a production manager position at a research and development center 1,000 miles away with a significant salary increase. We moved, leaving friends and family behind. Tracy got a job at a large credit card company's call center with over one. A year later, there were 200 employees her age. Bobby was born, and I convinced her to be a stay-at-home mom since I was well paid. She loved her work and made friends quickly. They became our social circle, and we often got together with her coworkers and their spouses. I had no objections, but our social life mostly revolved around her coworkers. I didn't fit in with the other workers, but they were all really nice. The messages were from our friends, who Tracy had told about our problems in detail. They told me to meet up and sort things out. I was surprised she'd kept this from me, but shared it with them. I don't like others knowing intimate details of my life. Tracy didn't call or text, even though I'd blocked her. Cassidy, Tracy's best friend, seemed to be behind everything. She wanted me to meet the group at her house on Sunday at 6 p.m. I thought it might be a trap, so I suggested Angus Steakhouse instead, where I could leave freely. They were happy with that idea. I had several reasons to agree to the meeting, to understand why Tracy did what she did, to see whose side our friends were on, and to learn if anyone was involved in her actions as an account manager. I'm used to confrontations and staying calm. I wanted to get some answers so I could make an informed decision. I parked my car nearby and walked to the restaurant. I realized the group had arrived early to strategize, which amused me. There was only one seat at the table next to Tracy. She stood to greet me, but I stopped her before she could reach me. "If you don't mind, I'd prefer to sit at the far end of the table." I said, "I'd prefer to sit at the far end of the table if that's okay with you." Cassidy responded quickly before Tracy could. "Of course, Brian. Please give Brian a seat at the end of the table. Your dinner is already paid for. Let's all go ahead and order." We were in a private dining area to avoid prying eyes. Everyone placed their orders quickly before Cassidy or anyone else could start talking. I handed out copies of the photo of Tracy kissing the mystery man. "You all seem very interested in Tracy and me settling our differences." I was shocked she shared our personal matters before we had a chance to discuss them ourselves. This shows her continued disrespect for me and our marriage. Cassidy tried to speak, but I interrupted. I interrupted before any discussion began. "I want an answer. Look closely at this picture. Do you see that man?" Tracy refuses to give his name. "I'm sure at least one of you knows who he is. If you want to help, I need information. If no one can be honest and provide the facts, then we have nothing more to discuss." There was complete silence. There was silence. Even Cassidy was hesitant to speak. No one claimed to not know the man or offered his name. I had my answer. "Thank you for your time. I hope someone is hungry enough to eat my steak. I've lost my appetite. No one here seems interested in helping us repair our relationship. I apologize." I got up and left. Tracy called out begging me to come back. But no one else did. It was obvious that our friends were her friends, not mine. Tracy, Cassidy, and the group were taken aback. They had planned a reasonable discussion, but I blindsided them with my demand. They weren't prepared to handle it. I didn't mention it at the restaurant, but I was on my way out of the motel. I stopped at a fast food place when I got home. I grabbed something to eat. I also talked to the babysitter, Para, and thanked her. I quickly ate and moved my clothes and personal items into the spare bedroom. Over the weekend, I had bought locks with identical keys for the spare bedroom and Hall B doors to avoid any physical encounters with Tracy. Once I was settled, I played with my 3-year-old. Tracy bathed and put her son to bed. She got home at around 10 o'clock. It's 15 p.m. She seemed happy to see me back and found me in Bobby's room watching him sleep with tears streaming down my face. I told her it was time to leave and not to disturb his sleep. After closing the door, she tried to hug me, but I stopped her. "I'm glad you're back. Let me make you something to eat. We need to talk." "I've already eaten, but thanks." "Where have you been with your lover again?" I hinted. "No, I was at the steakhouse. They helped me find the right words to get us back on track. I have a lot to tell you." She explained, "I'll talk if you give me your lover's name. If not, we have nothing to discuss." I can't. I just can't. I might be carrying now, but I won't let this stop me from seeing my son. If you're ready to talk, your first words will be your lover's name. If you're willing to sacrifice our marriage to protect him, then so be it. Don't speak to me until you're ready to give up his name." She walked away, sobbing. A week went by. Tracy and I only spoke to Bobby, not to each other. On Monday night, I came home to a surprise. Everything seemed fine. I walked into the kitchen and a crowd of Tracy's friends surrounded me, eager to see me again. They avoided saying anything that might annoy me, but it felt like they were walking on eggshells. The first thing I asked was where Bobby was. I didn't want adult conversations around my son. "I've dropped him off at the babysitter's, who's staying there tonight." Tracy explained that she'd seen me and said, "I see." I was surprised. There had been a I wasn't aware of the plan. "I didn't see your cars parked outside. We all parked a block away to surprise you. Brian, we couldn't risk you driving by after seeing our cars." Cassidy said, "Well, you caught me off guard. Why are you all here? Has something changed that I should know about?" I asked. "Yes, honey." Tracy began, "Let's go to the living room and explain everything. I'm ready to answer your questions." "Sure, but I need to use the bathroom first." "I'll be right back." I went to the restroom, turned on the recording on my cell phone, and put it in my shirt pocket. I then joined them in the living room and noticed two new faces. I immediately recognized Tracy's lover sitting next to a younger woman. Tracy began, "Brian, meet Elliot Franklin and his wife Gail. They've been our friends for a long time. I know this may shock you, but you insisted on knowing who he was. We all decided this was the best way. If you attack him, the guys here will step in. We don't want anyone to get hurt, so you finally show me his face. It's a bit late to worry about me getting hurt, isn't it?" I said sarcastically, "You didn't care about hurting me, just keeping him safe. Don't worry, I won't touch him. I don't want any diseases he might have given Tracy." Everyone groaned in disappointment. Cassidy jumped in, "Brian, we understand your frustration. Can we? Let's talk calmly. We're trying to give you what you asked for. You wanted his name, and now you have it. We assumed you'd also want to talk to him, and we've arranged that. Elliot doesn't need me to speak for him. He can speak for himself. We're just introducing you." Elliot stood up and held out his hand. "We've gotten off to a bad start. I hope we can make up for it. We can be friends, or at least polite. I'll treat you with respect and courtesy, and I hope you will do the same." "May I call you Brian?" he asked. I kept my hands at my side first since we're just meeting. "Mr. Franklin, you should call me Mr. Wilson. I can't imagine our relationship warrants familiarity. Second, you promised respect after showing I'm sorry, but I can't let you disrespect me like this and expect me to treat you politely in return. I'm not going to ignore your insolence and treat you with respect in return. I'll call you Mr. Wilson, but I'd like to discuss what happened between me and the woman you married. I'd like to call her my wife, but I'm not sure that's going to last. I'm thinking of getting a divorce, which I'm sure you know, Mr. Wilson. Should I address her as the woman I married?" "I'll accept that very well, Mr. Wilson. I'd like to explain what happened between her and me. I hope you find my perspective acceptable." "I'm listening, Mr. Franklin." "Go ahead." Elliot took a deep breath and began looking around the room. "Mr. Wilson, you just look at this room full of attractive people, including the woman you married. Do you think it's a coincidence that your best friends are more attractive than average? This group came together like birds of a feather. As friendships grew, so did closeness. Everyone here is in a happy, stable relationship. Our goal is to build confidence in ourselves. Soulmates, making us inseparable. We all believe the same about you and the woman you married." He continued, "Take my wife Gail. She's as great to me as any woman here. We plan to spend our lives together. No man here, including you, will take her from me. This confidence allows us to share with others for our mutual growth. Monogamy is outdated. True love is all about trust, closeness, understanding, and sharing. I wish you and your wife, Mr. Franklin, all the best. I don't agree with this group's views, but that's my opinion. Mr. Wilson, you should consider the benefits of trust, understanding, and security in your relationship. It could really help you both to grow." He said, "If what you say is true, Mr. Franklin, then you just called every woman here a strumpet, including the one I married. I'm appalled that you changed her morals so easily. A gentleman never interferes in marital relations as you have. I see your flawed logic, Mr. Wilson. This isn't one-sided. You're also invited to embrace our concepts. You could be with any woman here if you wanted. When you joined our group, you were invited to participate fully. If you hadn't reacted so harshly, she would have discussed the potential benefits with you. Instead, she panicked and he stepped back. I'm sure you'll see the benefits of what we suggest. We just need to find a way to make you comfortable." I saw. I pretended to consider his words, then I looked Tracy in the eye and asked, "Is this true? Did you discuss this with them and agree to test the waters with Mr. Franklin without?" Tracy nodded and said she'd let me know. I'd heard how these experiences can improve and strengthen marriages, and I wanted the same for us. I was thinking about how I could benefit our relationship. I love you, and I only wanted to show you what I'd learned to convince you. It would be good for us, she said, smiling. It was our first proper conversation since that night, so she asked, "Do you really think that one session with him made you an expert?" "It wasn't your first time, was it?" She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. Mr. Franklin spoke up. "Don't you see, Mr. Wilson? We helped her understand the benefits of participation, and there are other advantages. You think you're some kind of Casanova." I asked Mr. Wilson. "I am experienced and attentive. I help less experienced lovers like the woman you married. She will learn and grow, and you will benefit from her new experience. Everyone goes through periods of complacency." I looked at Tracy again. When have I resisted trying something new? If you wanted to spice things up, why didn't you talk to me instead of jumping into bed with him? She replied, "Please don't misunderstand me, honey. You're a gentle and I need a sweet lover most of the time, but sometimes I want something more forceful and direct. Elliot showed me that he never tried to replace you in my heart." I kept my anger in check, realizing that our relationship couldn't be repaired inside. I felt a storm, but I stayed calm. Now I aim to. I'm gathering evidence to show how chaos has been created in their lives, which has led to the breakdown of my home. Thanks, Brian. Now I hope you see our group in a better light. Would you and Tracy consider joining your marriage, Willow? I'm sure it will grow stronger. I have to grin. I need more time to digest everything. Tracy and I need to talk one-on-one. Once we've sorted things out, we'll get back to you. Is that okay? He grinned weakly, needing my answer immediately but not getting it. Sure, he said reluctantly. Take as much time as you need. He nodded and 3 large men grabbed and held me. I wasn't going anywhere, though I was surprised I didn't feel threatened. Tracy walked over, pulled my cell phone from my pocket and started deleting videos. "Brian, we want to trust you, but until you're one of us, we have to protect ourselves. It was clear you were recording tonight's events on your phone. We can't afford." Tracy nodded at Elliot, who asked if the recording was gone. "Yes," she replied. "There's no recording of tonight." She took my phone away, showing she was fully committed to their group. I showed the look of defeat. Elliot wanted to know more. "I think you were recording to choose who to be with first in our group, but we can't take that risk." He patted me on the back and the group quietly left. I grabbed my keys and headed to the garage. Tracy asked where I was going to pick up Bobby. I replied, I was just going to get him. I was hoping we could reconnect tonight. Do you really need to get him now? I miss my son. I'll be back soon, I said, and walked out. I drove to Angus Steakhouse, hungry since I hadn't eaten dinner. The restaurant didn't disappoint. I savored the tender beef, mentally reviewing I was hoping my plan would work out. Mrs. Stevenson thanked me for the generous tip. I might need her help again soon. Bobby was thrilled to see me and couldn't stop laughing all the way home. I bathed and fed him before putting him to bed. Tracy informed me I told her I'd already eaten, but she was cooking something light. She seemed offended, but she brushed me off. She didn't want to upset Bobby since we both had work tomorrow. I got ready for bed. Tracy wanted to talk. She asked what was going on. She said, Brian, you seemed interested in Elliot's offer. Then you shut me out. She asked, what happened? I replied, I'm glad you asked. Let me answer with some questions. Your answers might provide clarity. She said, go ahead. She said that just before they left, 3 men grabbed her in her own house. She asked, is that true? I replied, yes. That's not what happened, she said. Was it 3 men who grabbed you? Yes, she replied. But I interrupted her. Did you protest to any witnesses who were also silent? No, she answered reluctantly. We're starting to understand. I want to be clear. Did I ask you to take my phone and delete anything from it? Yes or no, Tracy? Just be honest with me here. This is a long question, so bear with me. You admit you had no objection to me being restrained in my own home, right? Also, admit you took my cell phone and deleted recordings, not at my request, but at someone else's. Is that true, Tracy? Yes or no? I asked. My frustration was clear. Tracy replied, Good. We're almost there. Since I was in the room and didn't hear anyone ask you to delete anything from my phone, you must have agreed to this task without my knowledge. Is that correct? I pressed. Tracy looked down. Yes, that's correct. I hadn't thought of it that way. You make it seem like a betrayal, she said, her voice shaking. It is a betrayal, Tracy said. Oh, this is getting tricky. Your answers show that you're on their side, not mine. I'm going to bed alone. I don't want to be around someone who betrays me so easily. I left Tracy in the hallway. I locked the door at around 4 in the morning. I heard her trying to open it, but the lock stopped her. On Tuesday morning, I spoke to the vice president, Dan. Dan, can you recommend a good divorce attorney? I need one who will fight hard for the husband. I asked him, please, tell me you're not asking. Dan asked me to call Ted Russ from our legal firm. Ted can recommend someone to help. I'll call him and get back to you. Dan said, thanks, Dan. I'm glad you called. This stays between us. I said, I appreciate your support, Dan. I called Ted's office and set up an appointment for 2 o'clock. By 3 p.m., it was Beat Rick Thoron. She told me her caseload was 70% women and 30% men, but she fights hard for her clients despite the circumstances. I convinced her of my position and she agreed to take my case. She warned me I'd be paying child support until Bobby turned 18, including college. I told her I was happy to provide for my son and that I was hoping for 50-50 custody and alimony. She said that I'd likely have to pay for 3 to 5 years, depending on the judge. In this state, it's usually 1 year of alimony for every 2 years of marriage, up to 20 years after that it's limited. I'd have to deal with it for up to 10 years, which I'd be happy to do, but I'd have to pay her to have fun with idiots, which I don't think is fair. We'd already rented the house we lived in for the past 4 years while planning to build our dream home. I had lots of sketches. For our future retreat, those dreams are gone, at least the house won't be sold, divided, or fought over. Bobby being so young isn't attached to any particular home, so it doesn't matter to me. I know I could never sleep in the master bedroom again, knowing it had been used by that idiot. I don't know how many times they had been together before I discovered her infidelity. B explained that the average divorce in our state takes 8 months if uncontested and a year if contested. I hoped for the 8-month timeline. I wasn't keen on the idea of staying married to a traitorous wife, especially now that I decided to divorce Tracy. She also said there was no financial benefit to filing a declaration of infidelity, but it could help in custody disputes. She said the paperwork could be ready by Thursday afternoon, and I asked her to serve Tracy at work on Friday at 10:00 a.m. so her friends and colleagues could see it after we've sorted out the divorce and agreed on a fee. I asked about living arrangements until the divorce is finalized. What questions do you have? Brian B., my attorney, asked, what's your main concern? My main concern is time with my son. 8 months to a year is a long time for both of us. I don't want to be an absent father. Would it be illegal or inappropriate to continue living in the same house to maximize my time with him? I asked, is it common for this to happen? B replied, it can be challenging. I asked, how so? She said, on Friday, she'll be extremely unhappy if you're nearby. She might retaliate. I said, I can handle it. I know we're legally separated. She said, she may not want a divorce. Often, cheating wives want both their husband and their affair. She might try to prevent it. I said, I'm aware. It's a legal process. Right, she can't stop it just because she wants to. I said, trying to understand the situation fully. That's true, but she could complicate things. I asked, concerned, if you become intimate before the divorce, the timeline resets to 0 and you'll wait another 8 months. The state will see it as a desire to end the divorce process. I can see Tracy trying to lure me into bed to disrupt the process. I have to be strong. I said firmly, I won't give in. You don't have to insist. Tracy could claim you had an affair. Unless you can prove otherwise, which is nearly impossible, the judge will find it hard to believe you weren't intimate while living together. I've seen it before. Brian and I strongly advise against it. I countered, if she makes such a claim, would she need to provide specific details like time and place? I could refute. Yes, she'd need details, but it would still be your word against hers. The judge might believe her, especially if she's tearfully persuasive. Be warned, leave it to me, thank you. You've been a great help. I said, feeling somewhat reassured. I then discussed another legal issue that I would face after the divorce. Tracy usually gets home half an hour before me, so I wasn't surprised to find her cooking. I avoided the kitchen and headed upstairs too. I showered in the hall bathroom, which gave her fewer opportunities to catch me out. I took a change of clothes with me, as I was going to be living separately under the same roof. When I came out of the bathroom, she was waiting in the hallway. Dinner will be ready soon. Bobby's in his high chair. You smell nice. I said, go ahead, explain about the cell phone last night. Elliot knew you were recording and said it wasn't fair to expose everyone to that risk. They couldn't leave until the threat was neutralized. He suggested I delete the records myself in your presence. I asked, why did they trust you to do that to your husband? I gave them my word, Brian. I don't understand. I want you to be faithful to me, Brian. I was glad there was silence after I made my remarks. I don't want you to think I'm on their side. That's not true. Tracy said it isn't. What if those men had grabbed you in our house? Do you think I would have stood by silently? I challenged her on that. What choice did you have, Brian? They could have taken you easily. She reasoned that's true, but that wouldn't have stopped me. I would have fought for you because I would have. I was on your side, not theirs, last night. You acted like one of them. I pointed out that I'm sorry, but you don't understand. I explained about the cell phone. I don't know what else to say. She said, looking frustrated, is there nothing more to say? I joked, you're right. How did you find those pictures? She asked, her curiosity piqued. I'm sure you would. Maybe one of your friends isn't as loyal to your cause. What if a coworker sent those pictures? How would you feel if someone sent you those pictures? I teased. Who? Please tell me who, she asked urgently. I can't tell you. Tracy, why not? I gave my word. I said with a grin. She realized she wasn't getting anywhere and decided to change the topic. Did you enjoy watching? She asked, trying a different angle. No, I just saw a bunch of animals. I replied bluntly. That's right, Brian. It doesn't have to be emotional. It's supposed to strengthen our marriage. I said, how's that going? Our marriage is hanging by a thread. She replied, I already feel closer to you. Tracy added sarcastically, don't be like that. You don't understand. Stand back. Has our life become so boring and devoid of fantasy that you think we can't survive as a couple without involving others? I asked, my voice filled with disbelief. I didn't say that it's not about survival. Don't you want to do more than just survive? Shouldn't we take chances to what's the harm in trying to strengthen our marriage? She asked, her voice full of frustration. The harm is that we've lost the trust we once had. Your experiments are tearing our marriage apart. Maybe your friends don't value fidelity, but I do. I don't trust you anymore, Tracy. You've shown you're capable of doing whatever you want behind my back. If it's so important, why didn't you talk to me before you got involved with another man? I knew you'd react like this. I thought if I took part and saw the benefits, I could bring what I learned to you. When you see the improvements, you'd understand the value. She explained, trying to justify her actions so you and Elliot see yourselves as enlightened people who need to be spoon-fed superior knowledge. How elitist of you. I didn't realize how lucky I was. I said, sarcasm dripping from my words. She noticed, so I let her show. I've learned a few things. I picked up a few tips from Elliot and spent some time with Gail last night. The goal is to improve our love life, not destroy it. Let me show you. You won't regret it. She was really enthusiastic, trying to persuade me. Every time I look at you, I cringe. I'm not interested in kissing you anytime soon. All you offer now is what used to be mine. I shared it freely with other men. I retorted, my anger barely contained. Only yours. You don't own me. I never have. And she said defiantly, you're right. I never claimed to own you. I thought you were mine because you said you gave yourself to me. Now you've taken that back and given it to another man. You've broken something in me, Tracy. I'm not sure it can be fixed. I said, my voice filled with sorrow and finality. She started sobbing again. That was the last conversation we had until Friday. I spent all my free time with Bobby. I changed his diaper. I didn't ask for her help. It was like a game of who bathed him the most. Bobby enjoyed the attention, and so did I. Over the next few days, I researched Elliot and Gail Franklin. I found almost nothing. The only public record for an Elliot Franklin was a homeless man arrested for soliciting money downtown. The photo and age didn't match the one who had entertained Tracy. I'll keep trying to find out more about them. I arranged for Tracy to be served at 10. I'll get back to you at 10 a.m. On Friday, I was at a meeting of the local chapter of facilities managers. These meetings last 2 to 4 hours, including lunch, and are sponsored by contractors advertising their services. If Tracy called, my secretary would confirm my extended absence. I'd leave my phone on silent, only answering emergency work calls. I wasn't. I didn't want to talk to Tracy just then, as I thought she might need a bit of time to process everything. When I got back to work, I saw she'd sent me a few messages, so I called her back. She answered pretty quickly, and it was clear she was upset. I said, "Are you serious? Am I getting served in front of my friends?" I was so embarrassed. "Are you really divorcing me over this?" "I told you. It was nothing, Brian. You need to understand that. Why won't you return my calls? Why won't you talk to me? My secretary should have informed you that I was in a management meeting. I called you back as soon as I could. I have a job to do. When have I refused to talk to you? You've been avoiding me for the past 2 days. Let's pick up this conversation after work when we have more time," I said firmly. She started crying. "I don't want a divorce, please, Brian. Don't divorce me. We'll talk tonight, okay, Tracy?" "Okay," she said, sniffling. "I love you tonight." "Then goodbye, Tracy," I said, ending the call. I had one more short meeting about a lab issue and called our contractor to resolve it. I arrived home early, knowing Friday afternoons are usually quiet. I realized she might not want to cook, so I picked up Chick-fil-A. I went over to her place for dinner and texted her to let her know I was on my way. I got there shortly after she did. I picked up Bobby from her car and carried him inside. She gave me a hug as I held him. I put him in his high chair and helped feed him. Babies can be messy eaters, and Bobby was at the stage where he liked to throw food. She thanked me for we ate the takeout together and chatted with Bobby, even though she was crying. I spent the evening with Bobby, not leaving his side until he was asleep. He was my focus and the reason I was willing to stick it out. Later, I found Tracy in the living room, looking over the divorce papers. She took a deep breath to calm down. I'm sorry, Brian. Is that what you wanted to hear? She asked, her voice trembling. To be honest, it's the first apology since this started. What exactly are you apologizing for, Tracy? I asked, my tone stern. You saw those pictures and found out the way you did. I can. Just picture how awkward it must have been for you. She said, trying to sound sincere. So, you're sorry I found out, not sorry you cheated. I replied, feeling the anger rise. Don't say that. Elliot said that once you see the benefits of our group, you'd accept it. You'd have the freedom to be with other women. She went on, trying to justify her actions. Women just like I am with other men, she explained, desperately trying to justify her actions. Of course that's what he said. You and Elliot both failed to consult me about infidelity. It's a shame you trust his words over mine. He doesn't know me or our marriage, and apparently neither do you. I feel betrayed. I realize now I acted wrongly. You're right, I should have talked to you first. Elliot told me that if I had approached you, things would have gone smoothly. He's convinced you'll come around, but now I'm not sure. Why don't you call off the divorce and let's get back to normal, she pleaded. That train has derailed. You blew it up when you cheated. Just sign the papers and let's move on with our lives. You don't want Bobby to end up in a single-parent family. Calling another man daddy? No man wants that for his son. Reconciliation is. She said the best option would be for me to remarry so that he wouldn't have to call another woman mom. I replied that I should have thought about all this before I broke my vows. I said that I would rather hear him call another man daddy than live in a lie. I don't want to be part of your group of infidelity. I can't be with you again. I'm not interested in being physical with you. Tracy, you're wrong. You're just saying that to hurt me. It really hurts, Brian. She said, her voice was breaking. What if I gave up the idea completely? I'd swear I'd never get involved again. What if I turned my back on them as friends? I'm desperate. You and Bobby are the best things in my life. I'm sorry you think I've turned my back on us, but it's not true. That's not true. I value you above anything else, she said, her eyes welling up with tears. I hear what you're saying, Tracy, but I don't believe you. You've already proven yourself to be untrustworthy. I can't work with you like this. Just sign the papers and let's get this over with. I said firmly, I'll never sign those papers. I don't want a divorce, and I'll fight you every step of the way, no matter how long it takes. I may have lost you now, Brian, but I want you back. I'll do whatever it takes to get you back. I know you'll always be true to your vows, even if you've been cheated on before. That's how I see you. She started to cry, realizing what she was up against. She asked, Do you expect me to leave? I'm staying with Bobby, she said. We have nowhere else to go. You're right, he replied. Bobby is my whole world now. I don't want to be away from him, so I'll stay here during the divorce. I won't get in your way. I don't need you to do my laundry, cook, or clean. You take care of your needs. I'll take care of mine, and we'll both take care of Bobby. Just don't touch me. I can't stand it. We'll have to coexist until the divorce is final, but there'll be no reconciliation. I said firmly, and her hope turned to dejection. I heard you, Brian, but divorce is a long road and a lot can happen. I'm going to get you back, honey. I swear I will. She declared, as long as if you hang out with your friends, you won't have a chance. I won't socialize with them again if you ever bring one of your lovers here. You and he will regret it. Is that clear? I warned you. Of course, sweetheart. I'll turn my back on them if that's what it takes. Do you want me to quit my job and be a full-time mom? She said, trying to find a way to make things better. It's too late for that. Besides, if you did, I'd just be paying more in child support in the divorce. I managed to get my ex to agree to stop me spending time with my son for a few weeks. We communicated politely, saying only what was necessary. Surprisingly, we agreed to several suggestions from my attorney. I would pay the rent if Tracy paid the utilities. I can cancel all utilities in our joint names and reissue them in hers, as well as both of ours. We'd paid off the cars, so we each paid for our own gas and insurance. We took care of our own meals, so there was no need to share groceries. Financial independence was easier than I'd expected, since I still paid most expenses. She accepted it, so I transferred half of our savings to a new account in my name and left the rest in hers. She was unpleasant for a few days, but soon realized I was just enforcing the divorce term. She refused to sign, but I was always polite and never refused unless she got personal. I never asked her for anything or started conversations. While looking for socks in my desk drawer, I realized I hadn't seen the 3 pictures of Tracy and her lover. I urgently searched all the drawers but couldn't find them. I knew who had taken them. Looking at the lock on my door, I noticed fine scratches suggesting she had a locksmith make a key. On the next day, I bought 2 new identical locks for the bedroom and bathroom doors and kept the keys hidden. She didn't want me to know she could access my room, and I didn't want her to know she couldn't anymore. Her continued betrayal confirmed my decision to divorce was right. I wondered if she'd lie about her date. After a few months, Elliot started asking me to take her out or do couple activities. I always declined, but she kept asking. She was getting nervous and missing her friends, but she remembered her promise not to socialize with them. Then I started getting calls and messages from them, inviting me out or offering to stay away. I blocked each number without responding. In mid-December, she invited me to her company's Christmas party. I declined, citing a babysitting commitment, and wished her a good time. We had always gone together before, but the following weekend was my company's party. I planned to go alone, but she didn't. I wanted her to take Bobby to the babysitter, and I left for the party without saying anything. She followed me and found me at the party. She looked great and tried to chat, but I kept my distance. Vice President Dan asked if we'd made up. I told him what happened, and he laughed, admiring my courage. I said my main focus was spending time with my son. Dan understood and left the party. I picked up Bobby, who slept the whole way home. I thought Tracy would be upset, but she seemed grateful for any attention she got. Tracy wore minimal clothing around the house. I used my engineering skills to lower I thought the house temperature was a bit low, so I turned it up a notch. It had the desired effect, and after 2 weeks, I reset the thermostat to normal. At least I gave it a shot. 5 months later, she told me she was having dinner with her friend Cassidy on Saturdays. If I didn't mind watching Bobby, I agreed, as long as she didn't bring anyone. On those Saturday nights, I joined my employer's bowling league and had a great time. Bobby got a lot of attention from the ladies, which was much better than sitting at home wondering about Tracy. One day, I got home later than Tracy and she asked where I had been with Bobby. I told her the truth. She asked to come along next time, so I told her the truth. I only left the house when she did, which upset her, but pleasing Tracy was no longer my concern. She often asked how we could be a loving couple again if I never gave her a chance. She never signed the divorce papers, which were supposed to take a year. 6 months later, my attorney B. Thoron informed me that Tracy's lawyer had successfully argued for 10 mandatory marriage counseling sessions, 2 a week. I had to attend and answer every question the counselor asked. I asked if I could repeat the same short sentence for every question. B said as long as it was relevant to our marriage, it was fine. I was told that anything relevant to our marriage was fine. I thanked her and hung up. It seemed that Tracy's lawyer had ensured the counselor was biased in favor of the wife and made the husband look bad. I didn't care what the therapist thought as long as I followed the law and replied to every question and statement from Tracy and the therapist. I said that I didn't want to. It didn't take long for them to get frustrated and angry, despite the verbal abuse from both women. I remained calm and polite after the 5th session. The therapist canceled the remaining sessions, calling them unproductive. The following months passed without any change. I spent every spare minute with Bobby, strengthening our bond. 4 days later. Before the divorce hearing, Tracy moved out with Bobby and I was served with a restraining order. I was contacted with bad news. You know me better than that, so I don't think there's any truth in it. I said, trying to keep my cool. I needed to hear it from you. I will fight for you, but it will be hard without evidence. Has she provided all the information needed to investigate? I asked her if she had any new information. She said she did, so I asked her to send me the details. I told her she couldn't contact her son or me until I said otherwise. If she called, I told her to hang up. I got the message and repeated it 2 days later. I walked into the house after work and saw Tracy I saw her at the kitchen table. Her car wasn't there, so she must have come with someone else. My first impulse was to leave to avoid violating the restraining order, but she called out, "Brian, turn around and listen. If you want to see Bobby again, you've got to listen to me." She had my attention. I just stared at her, keeping my distance. "You don't have to say a word. Just listen," she said. I stayed calm and she was pretty confrontational. She demanded that I hand over my phone so she could turn it off. I put it on the table and she picked it up and turned it off to make sure there was no recording. I tried to calm you down, but you were pretty stubborn. I had to resort to desperate measures. How does it feel to be on the other side? I said we'd had sex to turn back the clock, but Elliot convinced me to have a backup plan in case your lawyer objected. So I made up a story about you hitting me. We both know you never touched me, but I needed full custody of Bobby, which left you with little time with him. It's not the kindest thing to do, but it gives me leverage. If you cancel the divorce and agree to join our group of friends, I'll lift the restraining order, move in, and we can resume our marriage. Bobby wouldn't be in a single-parent family, which is a good thing. I promise you'll get used to it. What do you say, Brian? Live in the real world with me. You'll have a good time. She hit me where it hurt the most, my son. Nothing else in the world means as much to me as he. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. For now, please leave. I insisted, and she smirked as she walked past me, knowing she had leverage. I waited until I heard the door close and looked out the window. I saw a shiny Lexus pull up and drive away, driven by Elliot Franklin. He must really want her in his group. I had a lot to think about. I was informed that my presence at the divorce hearing wasn't required, but I wanted to be there. I left the men's room and headed to the courtroom. Tracy appeared and hissed, "You had your chance. I'll make you regret this. Your son will never know you, and he'll call another man father. I'll find someone who trusts and believes in me." She spat in my face and left, and people were looking at me, wondering what I'd done. I wiped my face with a handkerchief and went into the courtroom, sitting in the back. I hope my lawyer was as good as hers. While waiting, I listened to other divorce cases and noticed that those representing themselves were at a disadvantage. Our case wasn't heard until 1 p.m. morning. It was a long day in court. First up was Tracy, who gave her testimony. She told the judge about the alleged assaults, including the dates, times, and locations. She also asked for custody of the children, child support, alimony, and even jail time for me. Despite her tearful testimony, my attorney remained calm and collected. He was drawing flowers in the margins of her notes. Tracy's lawyer painted me as a violent and unsuitable parent. They said that Tracy had tried to reconcile with me and that my jealousy was the reason for the breakdown of the marriage. After Tracy's lawyer finished, I started my questioning. I wanted to confirm that you're certain of the dates, times, and locations of the alleged attacks. Could you be mistaken, Mrs. Wilson? No, ma'am. My attorney told me to document everything, and I wrote it all on a calendar. Tracy responded confidently, so I asked her to swear under oath that her allegations are accurate and true. Yes, ma'am. The truth must be told, Tracy replied, her eyes welling up with tears. No further questions, Your Honor. You may step down, Mrs. Wilson, the judge said. Thank you, Tracy replied. Judge C.O.R. Feldman told her that he was surprised that she and her lawyer hadn't asked her more questions. I thought I'd won, Tracy said, a hint of a smirk on her face. I was ready to turn my son against me. Your Honor, she continued, I would like to call Mr. James McMahon too. The judge nodded and a plain man took the seat. Tracy and her lawyer conferred, looking puzzled. Please state your full name for the record, he said. James Winford McMahon, he replied. Thank you, Mr. McMahon. May I call you Jim? Thank you, Jim. Please. Jim, can you tell the court where you work and the nature of your business? I own and operate McMahon Investigative Services. Jim, can you tell the court how you met my client, Mr. Wilson? B. He approached me about 14 months ago. He was concerned about his wife, Mrs. Tracy Wilson. He suspected infidelity but had no proof. We offer private investigative services to confirm such suspicions. He used our services of her infidelity and gave him 3 photos of her in bed with another man. Jim said these were the only copies of her dating photos. Mr. Wilson, do you have any other copies of these images? Yes, I do. These are the original, uncorrupted photos. Jim confirmed that he wanted to admit the 3 photos into evidence. He asked the judge to accept them, reviewed them, and then handed them over to the bailiff for processing. Jim was concerned that the affair might still be ongoing, so he asked for guidance. I recommended installing hidden surveillance cameras. We also installed microphones throughout the house to monitor and record phone calls, secret meetings, and graphic images. Jim explained that he had done this for Mr. Wilson. He asked if Mr. Wilson had hired the firm to do this. We installed the equipment the next day while Mr. and Mrs. Wilson were at work. Jim confirmed that he had done this. Tracy's attorney protested and tested the equipment. He requested that all evidence obtained through those hidden cameras be declared inadmissible. Inadmissible. Mr. Wilson could have easily altered those recordings to smear my client. Judge C.O.R. Feldman looked at B before I rule on your objection. I'd like to find out if there are grounds for it. Attorney Thoron, thank you, Your Honor. Jim, can you explain the nature and type of surveillance system installed in Mr. Wilson's home? B asked. Jim nodded. Certainly, we installed a high-resolution digital surveillance system. The system has multiple cameras and microphones in key spots around the house. It records continuously and stores the data in a secure, tamper-proof cloud. The recordings are time-stamped and encrypted to ensure their integrity. Jim, can you confirm that the recordings submitted to the court haven't been tampered with or altered in any way? They're in their original, unaltered state, directly retrieved from our secure cloud storage. Jim confirmed that they hadn't been tampered with or altered in any way. Is this evidence admissible? Thank you, Your Honor. B said she turned back to Jim. Jim, did you review the footage from the surveillance system? Yes, I did. Jim confirmed. And what did you find? B asked. The footage showed Mrs. Wilson meeting with multiple individuals engaging in activities that support Mr. Wilson's claims of her infidelity. Additionally, there were no signs of the alleged abuse that Mrs. Wilson described. Jim stated. Thank you, Jim. No further questions. Your Honor, the case is concluded. Thank you, Mr. McMahon. You may step down. Judge Feldman said that while Tracy's attorney looked unsettled, Tracy herself seemed visibly shaken as the truth began to unravel in the courtroom. Thank you, Judge C.O.R. Feldman. She told Tracy that she and her attorney seemed stunned that he didn't question her more. Tracy's smirk said it all. She thought she had won. I was ready to turn my son against me, and the thought made me shudder, Your Honor. I would like to call Mr. James McMahon to the stand to testify. The judge nodded and a plain man took the seat. Tracy and her lawyer conferred, looking puzzled. Please state your full name for the record. James Winford McMahon. Thank you, Mr. McMahon. May I call you James or Jim? James, can you tell us where you work and what you do? I own and run McMahon Investigative and Security Services. Jim, how did you first meet my client, Mr. Wilson? Mrs. Wilson, we found proof of her infidelity and gave him 3 photos of her in bed with another man. Were those the only copies of her dating photos? No, we store all photos and videos in secure cloud storage and keep the originals. Mr. Wilson only got copies, and you have other copies of these images, right? Here they are, copies of the original photos. Thank you, Jim. Your Honor, we want to admit these 3 photos into evidence. The judge accepted them. I looked over them and gave them to the Baith team to process. Did that mark the end of your work with Mr. Wilson? No, he was worried the affair might still be going on and asked for advice. I suggested putting hidden cameras and microphones in the house to keep an eye on phone calls, secret meetings, and any other sensitive material. Did Mr. Wilson hire your company to do this? Yes, we installed the equipment the next day while Mr. and Mrs. Wilson were at work. Your Honor, I object. Tracy's lawyer said that the evidence from the hidden cameras shouldn't be allowed in court. Mr. Wilson could have changed those recordings to make my client look bad, Judge C.O.R. Feldman said. I'll decide on this objection later, but I'd like to know if there's a good reason for it. Jim explained that the data is streamed to our secure cloud servers. Mr. Wilson doesn't have access to the raw records. The laptop only stores the web address to which the content is sent. The only way to access these files is to contact my firm. We ensure the chain of evidence is constantly monitored. Mr. Wilson's only involvement is the monthly replacement of the camera batteries. Judge Feldman smiled at Jim and nodded. I've seen you in my courtroom before, Mr. McMahon. Your firm has an excellent. The objection is overruled. Thanks, Your Honor. Turning back to Jim, she continued, Jim, you heard Tracy Wilson's testimony accusing my client of assault. Here are the dates and times of the alleged assaults. Do you think her accusations have any merit? No, ma'am, they don't. What makes you so sure? When we reviewed the recordings from those dates, there were no incidents of violence. Mr. Wilson was happily playing with his son and Tracy Wilson was alone in another room. The house was peaceful at the times of the alleged assaults. Tracy and her attorney avoided eye contact, focusing on the floor. Jim, can you provide additional information regarding her allegations? Prompted, yes, I have a transcript of a phone call Tracy made the day before she moved. In the call, she said she talked about hating to see her husband treated this way and mentioned someone else punching her up so she could blame him. She planned to use this as leverage against him. Objection, Your Honor, that's hearsay. I can provide the original tapes. The transcript accurately reflects her words. Jim offered, and Tracy's lawyer didn't object further. Thanks, Jim. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Feldman then addressed Tracy's lawyer. Would you like to question this witness? Defeated, Tracy's lawyer replied, No questions, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. McMahon. You may leave the room. Judge Feldman said, Thank you. Jim responded and then left the courtroom. After Jim took his seat, the judge continued, It's clear that an innocent man is being falsely accused to sway the court in favor of full custody. Mrs. Wilson has perjured herself, which is a third-degree felony punishable by up to 36 months in prison. This transcript will be forwarded to the district attorney for possible prosecution. I grant full custody of Bobby Wilson to his father, Brian Wilson. Tracy Wilson will have visitation rights at Mr. Wilson's discretion. Mr. Wilson, please be generous with visitation, as your child needs his mother. I nodded in agreement. As for alimony, I award $1,000. $0 per month to Tracy Wilson for 42 months. Each of you will keep your cars. The checking and savings accounts will be divided equally based on the balances as of the divorce petition filing date. Each party will retain their retirement accounts since Mr. Wilson has primary custody. The court will not award child support. Mr. Wilson, do you wish to stay in your current residence or move? Judge Feldman asked. I stood up. Your Honor, I don't want to live there any longer. Tracy can keep renting the house if she wants to. I'm moving out. Mr. Wilson, the lease will be left to Mrs. Wilson. Judge Feldman confirmed that. Tracy got up slowly. You have 8 hours to return the child to Mr. Wilson. If you don't, you will be held in contempt of court. I understand, Your Honor. All restraining orders are lifted and I grant the petition for divorce in Wilson v. Wilson. You will both receive divorce decrees within 30 days. Tracy was upset to realize she'd lost her family. She turned to the judge and said, I'll bring Bobby to your place tonight after dinner. I'd like to be with him for a few more hours. She then turned to me and said, That's not necessary. I handed her a piece of paper with the address on it. Bring Bobby tomorrow at noon. I'll be settled in by then. She nodded sadly and said, I'm sorry this isn't what you wanted. The result is that you can now enjoy the exciting love life you always wanted, without me. I wish you the best of luck with your next open marriage. She didn't respond. Brian, thank you for what I asked. I'm surprised you didn't go after Elliot and Gail Franklin. They're great people. It's a shame you'll never get to know them like I did. She said, No problem. I'm not interested in Elliot or Gail Franklin, but I am interested in your company. I found out they have a strict non-tomorrow. I'm going to sue your company for violating their policy and almost costing me my marriage and son. Ronald Hensley is the main culprit, apparently. He slept with a dozen female employees. Your manager, Tracy, looked shocked. It turns out Ronald has a wife, Lydia, and 2 children. I don't know if she knows about his antics, but I'll make sure she does. That includes his relationship with Rita Consuela, or as you know her, Gail. But why don't his wife and children know? She pleaded, I deserve this. I replied coldly, Why did he destroy my marriage? Why shouldn't I destroy his? He almost took my son from me. Why shouldn't his children know the truth? Even now, you defend him. If you stick around, Tracy, you might get your dream man. He could be divorced within a year. The downside is he might also be unemployed, just like your call center girlfriends. Their silence about Ronald's behavior also violates company policy. You want us all fired? How am I going to support myself now? I promised your company I wouldn't publicize this, so don't worry about your job. You might even start your own group of followers. Just imagine how wonderful your life will be without me in the way. Once you explain how infidelity strengthened our marriage, the ladies will be eager to join. You might have trouble hiring another manager, but maybe one of the husbands will step up. Imagine all the exciting possibilities. She asked, But why are you protecting my job and firing everyone else? It's not a dream job and the pay isn't great, but it's enough so you don't have to rely on me for money when Bobby asks how I treated you in the divorce. I want to say I was fair, but if you tell him otherwise, I'll show him the proof. My friends didn't know I'd known her lover's real name from the start. My private investigator did a great job. An engineer always approaches a problem with knowledge. If we don't have the answer, we find someone who does. My lawyer sued Tracy's call center for $1. I got $5 million and settled for a tidy sum. She kept $250,000 and the rest went to me. I wrote Tracy a check for $42,000, paying my child support obligations in full with plenty left over to build my dream home. People at work were talking about me and many single ladies saw me as a potential catch, but after this roller coaster, I'm going to focus on Bobby for a while before dating again. I'm free at last.